MegaHerzzz. You're listening to MegaHerzzz on 4ZZZ.
You're listening to MegaHerzzz. Welcome to MegaHerzzz. I am in the studio. We've got a full house today. I'm Sarah, and my pronouns are they, them, and I am joined in the studio by...
I'm August. My pronouns are they, them.
I'm Claire. My pronouns are she, her.
I'm Charlotte. My pronouns are she, they.
Excellent. We got a full house today. Woo. So you're listening to MegaHerzzz, and before we get started, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're broadcasting here from Z Towers on the lands of the Turrbal and the Yagara people. And we would like to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and MegaHerzzz stands with our, all our sisters, and particularly with our First Nation sisters and aunties, and recognises them as the traditional custodians of the land. We've been talking about the report on women's pain. Charlotte, can you tell us what you've got about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So last week we had some results released from the Victorian Government's it's the Australian first ever inquiry into women's pain, which was conducted by the Victorian Government over a period last year. So this inquiry basically sought to learn more about medical gender bias and barriers in the healthcare system and how this might impact on women's experiences of pain and, all the things that come with that, such as dismissal, misdiagnosis, lack of pain relief. And this kind of report focused on all of women's pains, but it kind of had some focus on cardiovascular, neurological, reproductive and autoimmune conditions. So from the inquiry, we had more than 13,000 responses from Victorian women and girls, clinicians, researchers and peak bodies. So from the inquiry, we learned that 90% of respondents reported experiencing pain lasting longer than a year, and 54% described living with pain every single day. Women with disabilities and from the LGBTQIA+ community reported high rates of prolonged pain. 89% of survey respondents reported impacts of pain on their mental health. 59% of women said pain affected their recreation and hobbies, 52% their intimate relationships, and 44% their work, studies and volunteering. So obviously these are really high statistics we're seeing for pain in women. And the inquiry basically had 5 key learnings that I'm going to kind of detail out here, and then we'll get into a little bit of a discussion with the team. So the first learning from the inquiry were unmet healthcare needs. So this is related to experiences of dismissal, disrespect and inadequate treatment, leading to a distrust in health systems. So number 2 is gaps in research and representation. So this learning speaks to the limited research available on sex and gender disparities in health and ultimately contributes to inconsistent and inequitable pain management. Number 3 is gender bias in healthcare. So bias in pain perception often leads to women's pain being underestimated and inadequately treated. This is associated with cultural norms, language barriers and stereotypes around women's biology, and ultimately contributes to limited access and engagement with health services for women and girls. Number 4 is barriers across community. So unsurprisingly, the inquiry found that women living in regional and rural Victoria, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women, LGBTQIA+ communities and women with disabilities face even greater challenges in accessing and navigating healthcare services, and they often have to travel long distances and experience a lot of systemic discrimination when it comes to their health. And finally, the report saw a call for change. So the inquiry found that women want to be heard without bias or judgment, treated with empathy and respect, empowered to make informed decisions about their health, and access affordable, effective care easily. So team, do we have any thoughts about this recent inquiry?
We have lots of thoughts about the inquiry. Interesting statistics there. So it looks like, from just getting a bit of an average of those statistics, so we're saying, about half of all women in Australia experience significant amounts of pain on a very regular basis, and that contributes to a lower quality of life than would be expected. So that's a lot.
Yeah. That insane numbers. quite frankly.
That is a lot, and it's very interesting that that this inquiry is just happening now. I know that we've talked about previously on the show things like tests and experiments, medical experiments often don't actually include women in the trials because of perception of difficulties with fluctuating hormones, and so in a lot of the pain medication trials, women would not have even been included in those trials. Can I ask, team, does this sound right to you? Does this reflect your experience?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like a lot of people I know have always experienced that gender bias and just trying to go to the GP or just getting anything checked out. There's that extra layer, and also the intersectionality if you're of a different race as well, if you're queer. There's so much of just that bias and that dismissal. So
absolutely, that bias there, and I think that anybody, so certainly if you're a woman, you're already perceived to be a bit of a complainer, I think, is what's going on here. And then add to that, the perceptions, conscious bias, unconscious bias of women from various races, and people are not taken seriously because they are perceived, I think, by doctors as exaggerating, and so their pain is not taken seriously.
I think as well, the under research around especially reproductive health, and if you have a doctor who doesn't have the same experience as you, I think because periods and menstrual stuff and everything is a really regular thing that you experience, so it's every month kind of thing. I think it's kind of expected that it's you should be able to deal with it by now, or you should have whatever strategies in place by the time you're an adult, so you need to get over it or figure it out, or and so I think that definitely contributes a lot to that cultural kind of thoughts about pain.
And when we're talking periods specifically, culturally, women, depending on your cultural background, but certainly with a Christian cultural background, it's women's pain for childbirth. I mean, it's one of the first chapters in the Bible is you're okay. Well, sorry, you ate that apple, and enjoy painful childbirth and everything that goes with that. So culturally, there are expectations of that as well. Yeah, and
then if you add in any other layers, I know that queer people and non-binary people who have, kind of female body parts as it is, also experience a lot more barriers to not only being able to find a doctor who will, validate your experiences anyway, but also just, everything that comes with that as well. I think people, feel people don't feel comfortable to even go to a doctor in the first place, let alone the care that they're receiving will be adequate for their needs, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, I know sometimes I've felt like I'm overreacting when I need to, whenever I'm talking to a doctor, feeling like they're not, taking me seriously. I'm sure a lot of people could relate to that. And even, with the... It made me think of a lot of me talking with a lot of my friends about them getting endometriosis diagnoses, and just the insanely long process of just experiencing debilitating pain consistently. And I think I was talking about this in a uni class that I was in. I believe the process to get a proper endo diagnosis takes sometimes up to 7 or 8 years.
That is there is no reason for that. And it is also surgically invasive as well to get a correct diagnosis. They do need to do a diagnostic surgery to actually see what's going on and to assess the amount of scar tissue that you have. I did recently learn about endometriosis, that we do think of that as painful periods. We think of it as irregular and painful periods, but apparently it affects the entire body. So the cells and things, the abnormal growth of cells is not just in the womb and the womb lining, but actually affects other areas and organs of the body as well, which can lead to all over debilitating pain, but but considering that, you know, I'm over 50 years old and I'm only just learning this now, I imagine that is not a very well-known thing. And I think that does go to show what we're talking about here. There is just so much unknown and not yet researched about pain. Another thing that I have personally noticed is a lot of the time when you have a kind of a base level pain, regardless of where in your body it is, but if you have these kind of aches and pains and ongoing chronic pain, it tends to be not seen because it's not urgent. It is not an emergency, and so it's kind of gets shifted to the background as well because there's always something more urgent and more pressing going on, and so things can remain untreated for a really long time because they're just not seen as a priority.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends, I think, who've, you know, gone on a journey to discover what's going on with their body. Like they've had a lot of, you know, either gut issues or things like that, and they've kind of started this journey and they're like, we're going to do all these tests, and they do all these things, and then they don't really find what they're looking for, so they just kind of are like, oh well, go on your way, like you figure it out yourself. Like there's no kind of further interrogation as to like what that looks like for the rest of your life and all that. They're just like, oh, sorry, we didn't find anything, you know, we didn't find cancer, so therefore we'll you know, figure it out yourself.
Especially if you're presenting with something as an emergency. I mean, you know, that is the job of emergency doctors, is to rule out the life-threatening things. But then there seems to be a really big gap between okay, we know you're not dying right now, not immediately. So, go see a GP, and then there seems to be a really big gap there in terms of it's like, phew, you're not dying, so we could not worry about it. So, that has definitely been my experience a lot of the time as well. For like, I have migraines, and I have regular migraines. One of the symptoms I have with those is that I get chest pains and my arm goes numb, and like the side of my face goes numb. And so, of course, you hear that and you go, oh my goodness, you're having a stroke. And so you know, a couple of times I've had these symptoms, and I've gone to, you know, the emergency department going, just got to check this out. And, you know, they do all the responsible and appropriate testing that they do, but then they go, not dying, looks like a funny migraine, that's very unfortunate for you. We're really busy. See you later. So, so I've been having migraines for over 40 years now, and
figured it out.
Debilitating. I won't go too far into it, but I had recently. Have found some investigation that seems to be leading somewhere and may actually be helping with that. But even at the time when I was going through that, the doctor was saying, so, you know, what's been done so far about this? And I'm like, well, they checked that I wasn't dying, but then, you know, not a whole lot after that. And like, okay, that's interesting, and that seems to be, you know, the story for a lot of you know, female presenting people with female bits and pieces, that it's you're not actively dying right now, so suck it up, princess. Well, okay, let's go on with our show. We've come to the point in our show that we are going to talk about femicide. So we do have a content warning for our listeners. We understand that this is this is a strong topic, and a degree of self-care is required here. We do talk about this every week because we think that it is important, and we think it is very important that we keep this in the news and that we keep talking about this for as long as we need to until we don't need to anymore. And unfortunately, it is something that still needs care and attention. So we are going to discuss that now. So if you do need to take a moment of self-care and tune out, we will be back in about 5 minutes with some more music for you. But please do look after yourselves and take care. August, can you tell us what's been happening this week?
So we take a lot of our information from the Sherelle Moody Femicide Watch. If you want to support her, I believe Hearts for Change is doing a fundraiser or to raise money for her. We've had some issues like specifying if this next person I'm about to talk about has actually passed away, but there was a woman who was stabbed repeatedly by a man known to her in Harrisdale in WA on Tuesday. The woman was repeatedly attacked in what was believed to be another domestic violence assault. Her injuries are life-threatening, and they were alongside another man who was injured, though his were not as serious. Police said that the man was known to both victims, and he was taken into custody and to hospital. Unfortunately, we don't know this woman's name. It has not been published on here, but wishing her a speedy recovery based on the information that we have. Yes.
And another case that happened just this past week was that an 84-year-old woman was unfortunately found dead, murdered in her home. And this happened in New South Wales. The police have said that this was believed to likely be a domestic violence homicide, which is very saddening. So the victim was also known to this person. And yeah, so this just happened this past week, and 2 cases in 1 week. It's like any number should not be happening, so it's very saddening to see this.
Devastating.
Yeah, so if any of that was upsetting for you, you can reach out to 1-800-RESPECT. Their number is 1-800-737-732 for counselling and support.
Join us for Hearts for Change, a community event raising funds to help end femicide through the Red Heart campaign by Sherelle Moody, happening Sunday, November 23rd from 2 to 8 p.m. at Echo and Bounce and Season 3. Enjoy art workshops, short films, live local music and DJs, and a space to connect and create. Tickets are $20 from at come.together.bne and at keeping.brisbane.alive on Instagram. Proud sponsor of 4ZZZ.
You're listening to MegaHerzzz on the 4ZZZ 102.1. We were just going to highlight some different petitions, different events, campaigns, sort of things that were happening that were pretty feminist that we thought you might want to know about. Claire, you wanted to talk about the Jacqui's Law campaign?
Yeah, so this is something pretty recent. So there's been a campaign in Australia started by the daughter of Jacqui Lee Purton, who was a domestic violence victim in 2022. And so pretty much the law is about getting stronger sentencing regimes for domestic violence offenders who use vehicles as a means to, abuse or coerce, intimidate, anything like that. Because Jacqui was unfortunately killed with the use of a vehicle. And it's quite saddening because in Australia, there's been a lot of cases like this where vehicles are used in domestic violence, and it's always sentenced as something significantly lesser. So, it might get sentenced as just dangerous driving or just like manslaughter. So this law is petitioning against right now the Tasmanian Premier and the Family Violence Minister and Attorney General to make this change and install this law. So there's a campaign going on and a petition on change.org, which you can find through going onto Sherelle Moody's Femicide Watch on Instagram, and it's linked there.
Perfect. Yeah, that's incredibly important. I don't feel like vehicular sort of abuse is seen as a big part of domestic violence campaigning in this country. Speaking of Sherelle Moody, I mentioned it briefly before, but it's worth noting that there is an event going on at Echo and Bounce this Sunday from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m, fundraising for Sherelle Moody Femicide Watch called Hearts for Change. It seems like a really fun time. There's all sorts of community workshops, one run by Gorhor and one run by Teg. There's lots of live performances. There's Elisa McKinnon, Nix, I may have pronounced that wrong, Catch Cry, Liquid Sun, and Neighbours, and plenty of DJ sets as well. There's Shrish, Z, DJ KJ, and Fura. I'm sorry, guys. And there's also multiple film screenings, which is very exciting. and it's hosted by a mayor, aka Keeping Brisbane Alive, who I believe we've had on the show. But yeah, that's a lovely event and raising funds for an excellent cause. So if you are free on Sunday, get on down.
What time does it start on Sunday?
It starts at 2 p.m. and goes until 8 p.m. according to this ticket website. Charlotte, I know you had something on for our listeners on the Gold Coast, a little rally that was happening.
Yeah, so in other social justice news, if you're around Southport on Friday, there is a rally for a rent freeze scheduled on Friday, November 21st at 1 p.m. in Carey Park, Southport. The rally is supported by the Renters and Housing Union and is part of an ongoing Gold Coast rent freeze campaign by community members, union members and the Australian Greens in that area. So for the past month, these groups have been getting signatures on a council petition to freeze rent in the Gold Coast. The Greens will be presenting the petition to council on Friday, November 21st, and this rally is part of demonstrating support for the wider petition and campaign. The Gold Coast has seen house rents almost doubled over the past 5 years, and I think they're one of the highest rising rents in Queensland. So on top of this, the local and state governments have consistently taken inadequate actions to support the people of the Gold Coast. So if you're around then and you're passionate about housing equity, head on down to Carey Park at Southport on Friday at 1 p.m.
Hell yeah, very, very important. So if you have been living under a rock, the date of the Hottest 100 is changing this year in line with 4ZZZ's 50th years celebration. It's going to be on the Sunday the 7th of December, and voting is open right now. So Klaire and Charlotte, I'd love if you talk us through who you voted for.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely voted for a lot of local bands, a lot of local acts, especially a lot of female-fronted ones. So Daddy Harry, Blue Diner, Allison Road, all of that. Also some other bands like Special Features, all of like the local scene. And then also some interstate ones. So there's a lot of local artists, interstate artists, all Australian. So like Mousa Tui, Garage Sale, stuff like that.
I love Mousa Tui. Oh my God, that was awesome. Who'd you vote for?
I think I had a focus on kind of Brisbane bands. So I had Straight Girls, Cola Dance Floor, which you're going to hear later, Oscar the Wild, Asher Jeffries, The Vovos, Platonic Sex, Boyd, Gloves, The Boys, Sacred Hearts, and Thelma Plum, who's one of my faves.
Love Thelma Plum. But yeah, honestly, we are coming to the end of our show, everyone. But we've had a lovely time chatting to you over the airwaves, and yeah, it's been fun. It's been real.
Isn't that what feminism is about?